these things, it becomes so insurmountable and unquantifiable. And that's why, because of that challenge, we wanted to prove that this was Earth's greatest enemy. And that's what the film does.
In your film, you talk about sort of misreporting, right? Let's talk about some of that data and statistics and how, there isn't really a way to quantify it. One is because of the dishonesty, right, of the U.S. government, right, and the misreporting that they do. They only have to report certain things, right, that are being used, and they pretty much just hide the rest. In your film, can you highlight a little bit on some of that data that they're hiding?
Yeah, well, I was surprised, even as someone who had been investigating this for many years, that to learn how intentionally obfuscated military pollution was. Because their whole thing is we're stewards of the environment. We do all these mitigation efforts because of the result of lawsuits, because of their sonar use, for example, in 70% of the world's oceans, this high frequency sonar that destroys marine mammals for, it goes 300 miles out in sea. So they've adopted this kind of whole propaganda effort to pretend like they're actually helping the environment. No, we help the sea turtles come back and nest with the Rimback war games. But what I was shocked to learn is that everything's omitted, right? So because they are the biggest, most powerful institution in the world, they have, under the pretense of national security, they can do whatever they want without any transparency at all. So they can go and do endangered habitats, protected arenas around the world that no commercial corporation or industry can, right? Or other state. So that alone is pretty amazing. Then you look at these global climate conferences every year that take place. I mean, COP30, I think, just took place in the Amazon rainforest. They bulldozed a bunch of the forest, probably expelled more emissions to get the delegates there than they've saved at the end of it. They didn't even mention capitalism or emissions in the final clause. But what's amazing about those treaties is that the military has always been exempt. Always been exempt. The U.S. military has been exempt from all of the calculations of our global carbon with all of these international bodies. And so it has always been a farce. And one of the shocking things about the lack of data is just how the impediment to animals and creatures. Because yes, they do, we know as the result of the Cost of War Project, Brown University, we know 4 to 6 million humans were killed during the War on Terror, for example. But we have no idea how many other species are impacted by these war games, by war in general, by the Rimback war games. And so that's when it becomes so extremely tough to wrap your mind around. For example, the legacy contamination in Iraq. None of that data is revealed from the military itself. They'll hide all of that, right? Like in Camp Lejeune, this is the most well-known event of water pollution in the US, but it's because of intrepid investigative journalists like we show in our film that goes and counts the baby graves because the military won't do it. So this is just, the examples are so numerous.
Are you familiar with the Fairchild Air Force Base here and the PFA pollution and contamination that actually happened in our community, to their water system? And they are still, at odds with the county and the U.S. government, right, for that contamination. This is why I think it was so powerful to have you come here, because it's personal. It should feel personal to most of the U.S. because not much is untouched by, right, imperialism, right, and industrialism, mass industrialism and pollution. But here specifically, they were using those PAFs, right? Is that what they're called?
PFAS, yeah.
Yeah. Was it PFAS?
PFAS.
Yeah, PFAS. And they were, busted for using that for a lot of their drills to put out fires and things like that, right, on the Air Force Base. And it got into the water, and they finally admitted. We do have some, obviously some crooked individuals, right, on our city council, or at least maybe not the council, others who represent county lines. And they really tried to hush what happened out there. But there's a lot of people out there right now. There's a lot of children out there. There's still children living on the Air Force Base. They were told to finally not drink the water as of recent in the last couple of years. But I can't just, after watching your film, it definitely brought up even more questions for me on what are the true impacts of what just happened in our own community. And that's just one example, we have Hanford, right, which was part of Oppenheimer's, like entire experiment.
It's like a ticking time bomb.
It is. And so we had plutonium and uranium and all kinds of things being produced around here. It got into the ground, seeped into the cow milk and into the grass. And so it's just like, it's very personal because it's not far away and it's in our backyard. And so, to anyone out there listening right now, if you don't care, you really should care. Because it's happening to your family, your friends, your community. And, I think by watching this movie, it will give you an avenue, right, to expose yourself to something maybe that you've otherwise either kept yourself, like, your head in the sand, right, and purposely tried to hide away from. But, the point of this film is to be provocative and to create a discussion and to, show the world through a different lens, right? This anti-propaganda, right? To be able to expose the truth of what is actually happening, because mainstream media is not going to do that. And, most people are force-fed and spoon-fed, Fox News, et cetera, right? All the big ones. And so I think this is a great way for, someone who's only familiar with those, real, powerhouse, main propagandists, mainstream media sources to be able to, I don't know, the facts in your film were very shocking, right? And tell me a little bit about how long it took for you to gather all this information. You went all over the world. And so, as I was watching it, I just kept thinking wow, you're an amazing person, right? It takes an amazing person to have that much energy, but to also put themselves into these really scary situations that the average person does not have the courage to do, right? Some of them don't even have enough courage to pick up the phone and read about it, let alone go onto a tanker or a ship, like a warship for war games, and call some serious inequalities and inequities in the world. And the look on those guys' faces when you ask these serious questions, he looked shocked. He looked he looked really uncomfortable. And I was really happy to see that, because I don't think those people ever have a chance to ever feel challenged or uncomfortable just because of the structure of how they live in the military, right? People obey orders, they listen, they have a rank, but you're here as a free citizen, right? Able to speak their mind as Associated Press. And I just found that so, inspiring.
Thank you.
And if everyone could do that, if everyone could wake up and question, things would be far different. Right?
Yeah, and for, people have to watch the movie because there's this amazing scene where I do get on a RIMPAC warship in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and I'm confronting these generals who are just used to being pampered and surrounded by access journalists, because what I was shocked to learn is that a lot of people who do go and report on these things are just part of the military industrial complex. So people who are in Air Force One, Defense One, and they just go to rebel with the latest weapon system. And so because I was there doing my job, I got the same kind of stock response from all of these people. We value a free press. Basically coded language of being you're lucky, girl, that we're not throwing you off board. We're lucky that you even get to ask these questions, even though we're not going to answer them. But there were some things that slipped through that were saying the quiet part out loud, very Trumpian. The one guy who, in the film, he's just I don't know if this is worth the damage that we're doing. You have these moments of honesty where you see a glitch in the matrix and these people come out of their hive mind of we need the oil, we need the minerals. And they're just wait, is this right? Okay, back to the grind. What you don't see in that scene is one of these guys who's just we are a rule of law organization and we exist to enforce the rule of law around the world. Oh no, and so what's amazing about that scene is that he comes up after me, after saying that. And he basically tells me, Russia and China don't follow the law. The US is good because we're better than Russia. He was trying to justify all of this to me. I wish I wish there was a mic going, but I was just you have to compartmentalize your position in the system. And like you said, the media is so captured. It's not going to tell us any of this stuff. And we have to understand why. Because the media is run and subsidized by the very same corporations who are destroying the planet. And they work in concert with the government to propagandize us all into complacency and acceptance of a global military empire.
I really wanted to circle back to the beginning of the film for just a second, just because there was an opener, right? Where you are watching these glaciers melt real time, right? You hike out there, and you're watching this all occur. You're seeing the damage that's been done. by global warming, by climate change, while simultaneously watching like the landowner in, the middle of the Arctic with a cowboy hat on have a wedding. And I was shocked, like just the duality of beauty and violence there, right? Like we're watching Mother Earth violently, for lack of a better word, raped,
Yes.
right? By humanity.
Yes.
Right. And at the same time, you're watching people celebrate, and I feel like that really says a lot about the human spirit in general, like there's a lot of good in humanity, right? But there's also that selfishness, right? Where they can't see beyond, right? Like the damage that they're doing and that sense of entitlement. This is my land. And were they aware that you were making a documentary or anything like that?
They didn't care. But that's what was so weird. We go to the Matanuska Glacier, and I've been to glaciers before, and usually they're on open public land. And the fact that this one was privately owned,
just wild in itself.
You have to go through a private access point and pay these landowners to get out there. And I was like, this is already bizarre and dystopian. And then, of course, they just parade through because they own the land, so they can do whatever they want. They're trampling all over the glacier, and then they come in cowboy hats and have this big party, and they kick us out. And I was so shocked and horrified. And then I was like, wait, this is the story. This is the story. Like you said, this kind of abstraction and detachment from the natural world, the trampling, the entitlement, that chauvinist, imperialist attitude that we are the global policemen, that we can do whatever we want, that we own the planet for short-term profit, for collective insanity, for nothing more than the short-sightedness of Jeff Bezos having another yacht. It is fantastically dystopian that this is the landscape of our reality. And we can watch it all happen real time. In the flick of a switch, within 5 seconds, we know every bad thing that happens on the planet. And we know who it's all going toward and who it's all for. And I think that's what's so bizarre, is that how is this agreed upon by such a large contingent of society? How have people decided to just let it go and enjoy the ride, right? And just become obsessed and double down on that kind of material consumption and abandon that wild freedom. Like how could you, what I don't get, like when I'm on a glacier and I'm like, how do you trash this place? How do you look around and you say, yeah, like how do you do that? That's what kills me. Like that duality is just insanity to me. Instead of having the opposite thought where you're like, we need to preserve this with everything that we have. This is beauty that can't be replicated ever again. Like we have to do everything that we can to preserve this. And instead you have people being like, let's go. Like, let's party, dude.
Let's
like,
barbecue and get married and have a hoedown right here at the edge of the world.
Yeah.
Where most will never see, right? And then a generation may never see it because it may not be here by that point.
But we got ours.
Yeah. That's that way of thinking, right?
Yeah.
It's just it's very confusing to me and always has been since I was a little boy. Why do people not care about each other like the way I care about other people? And I realize that the world is definitely full of a large percentage of takers. But there are a specific small niche percentage amount that are the world's greatest and worst human beings on the planet that model that behavior for the rest of society, for us to live this plastic dream that I'm going to be a billionaire someday. The thing that disgusts me, I think, the most, right, is like you've shown the layers that are in place, right, with capitalism and the distortions that are in place. These sort of demigod-like billionaires, and then we've got these demigod-like politicians that represent us, quote unquote. Even though I want to talk about how misrepresented I feel like you were in that film with what you were trying to accomplish at that global summit, that climate summit, right? But we'll get there in a little bit. But truly the layers of it all, right? From the top to the bottom, you show like the military industrial complex and what it's actually used for, the militarization of the police force against the U.S. citizens, right? The average U.S. citizen. You show a lot in this film. There's a lot to unpack. And I want to say that your film was really good, right? Because it made me feel sick. And I want you to know that.
Yeah.
I had somatic complaints after watching this film. And that means that it worked. What you did was, I think, what you went out to like really accomplish was to make people feel something. Not only was I challenged mentally, but I was challenged physically, right?
Yeah.
Because the disgust that I had for the exposure and the things that you were exposing in the film, it was just such a powerful event. And so I want to definitely warn those out there. I want you to see this film. It is very powerful to the point where, I felt like my stomach felt sick.
Yeah.
I had somatic complaints.
In a good way.
In a good way. I needed to feel that.
Yeah.
Because I think that most people, and the average person, I would say the average American, because I can't speak for the rest of the world, but I would definitely say is numb. Mm-hmm. We've been hammered down for so long by all of the propaganda, right? And we're told what to wear, what to eat, where to go, right? Every day. And so I just love that there's so much of a challenge of the rule of thought in this film. I mean, it's freeing to watch. It's freeing to watch you take these brave chances against these really prominent, powerful figures in the world who have a lot of influence. So let's talk about that global sort of climate, that climate party that I got to see that was funded by, big corporations, right? Everyone across the globe. No one that actually has the world's and the climate, right? Really at heart, right? It's really all I heard. And I love the sound bites that you snipped of just it's good for the economy. It's going to boost the economy. It's good for money. It's good and all I could hear was how good it was for these corporations and for these systems in place and how they were going to continue to grow and continue to abuse the planet and just actually ramp things up even further. We're not going to scale back. We're going to go harder. And so you're sitting there, and could you please just, if you can remember, the question that you asked Nancy Pelosi? Because the uncomfortableness of what she heard, that was just she glitched in the Matrix.
Yeah.
She was like, who is this person? How did you let them in this building? I was supposed to be asked fluffer questions. Why is she asking me real stuff?
Well, and it was the quintessential liberal encapsulation of everything that's wrong with the Democratic Party and liberalism, right? And with the incubation of how we got someone like Trump and how we're in this position today, and why the Democratic Party is just, leading us toward more of the same, is because she literally says, I want a woman. I want a woman. And she looks at me and then she says, maybe I don't. It is the weirdest thing.
I heard that in the film, and I was really surprised that she said that out loud. I was like, excuse me? I think she recognized you after they had already called on you, and she's like, oh God. I'm being really good, too, by the way, right now, because I cuss a lot, and this is for the radio, and I don't have time to edit, so it's a one and done. So otherwise, we'd be throwing a lot of F-bombs right now.
I cursed earlier. I hope
it's okay. I can edit that one out, but I don't have time to edit the whole thing.
Oh, my God. So Nancy Pelosi, she's like, I want a woman. Very identity politics driven. Then she's like, maybe I don't. And I basically was just like, how could we possibly talk about net zero? Because their whole thing is this propaganda about net zero, where they want to do carbon trades. And, it's that whole business model that Al Gore was like, let's trade carbon. Let's not get rid of it or stop drilling. Let's just trade it. You plant a tree and you trade a carbon. It's like, what the hell are we talking about? And so that was the whole thing, is how can we build this into a business? And so Nancy Pelosi, I'm just like, this is a joke. How are we talking about this without addressing military emissions? None of this addresses military emissions. And then she just starts stuttering and starts talking. She lets the cat out of the bag. She says, I've been having discussions with the military because climate change is a national security issue. And we're going to have to deal with migration and national security threats as it becomes worse. And it's like, boom, there you go. And then amazingly, she fields the rest of the question to Frank Pallone, a man, even though she's like, I want a woman. Let's discuss this as women. She's like, okay, Frank Pallone from New Jersey.
Yeah, take over.
Take over.
I can't handle this anymore.
And then Frank Pallone, this is cartoonish. I mean, it's like Idiocracy mixed with 1984. That's what we're living under. This guy is like, I've been having a lot of, he's like, I'm no defense guy. He's like, but the oceans are going to rise. And so there's no reason why we shouldn't have a bigger Navy. I mean, this is the madness that we're dealing with. So talk about banging your head against the wall. I mean, these are our leaders. These are our leaders.
Well, and you show the difficulties of gaining access to these individuals to ask real questions. They're quite guarded and quite padded with their handlers and the military and their own private policing. Mm-hmm. So you show in the film that you really have a hard time just getting someone to just meet with you to ask a few questions, like top military officials and whatnot. You go through these official channels to try to get these meet and greets with them and to do these one-off interviews. And you're just constantly cold shouldered. You know, like, do you feel like that was pretty much like the general consensus of most individuals that and this is why you have to really go in sort of undercover and on the spot to get these answers, because like they do just such a wonderful job of keeping people out, keeping people like you out.
When I was an accredited journalist working for Russia Today on the Hill, before the big scare of Russiagate and all that, I was an accredited journalist for 3 years on the Hill in DC, and my first experience in the halls of Congress, because I see Medea Benjamin walking around there every day, whiling out to Congress people about Gaza and stuff like that. I went and I saw Rand Paul walking toward me in the halls of Congress, and I was like, Rand, why did you endorse Mitt Romney? I thought that you were going in following the footsteps of your dad. I was like, Mitt Romney is a crazy war guy. He just walked past and whatever. The next day, I got threats from the Capitol Police to arrest me for stalking and harassment for asking a question out of turn to a senator. So he threatened my job, my life, my career for going out of turn. And then it basically erupted into this whole thing where I had a closed door meeting with like the head of the press agencies there. It was like under these interrogation lights, and they're like, look, kid, we worked really hard for access. Like, you don't go in and do this kind of stuff. And I was just like, what is going on here? It was really a rude awakening of how things operate. You have to go along to get along. That's why I wasn't surprised at all to learn that, CNN and all these agencies have offices next door to generals at the Pentagon, and they all have lunch together, and they all just are good old boys.
I was going to touch on that because when we talked about a two-party system, everybody went to the same colleges, everybody was in the same like fraternities, everybody golfs, everybody cheats on each other with each other's wives or partners, whatever they prefer, that we seem to be finding out more and more with Epstein and all the other things that have been extremely difficult as well to be able to get to the American public, to be able to review and make their own decision on. But I've never thought that I'd ever live in a time where not only would we be protecting, these like imperialist sort of like robber barons of the earth, but also, protectors of like pedophiles, it's blatantly in your face. And it just becomes more and more disgusting the longer that I have to live, right? Yeah. And I'm very happy to see that things are coming to this apex. You had mentioned something last night that there's no time better than now to really be angry, to be vocal, to organize and to advocate and to be a part of something right now, right? Instead of just being complicit and staying home and screening or watching whatever you stream through your television, which is another point I'll get on like the access to your film, because it seems to have been really hard to be a part of some of these mainstream media platforms. They really try to keep you out as well. So, like, where can someone see the film? I've been asked this multiple times over the course of people knowing that I was going to interview. Where is this going to be accessible?
It's going to be online soon. Right now, I'm on an exclusive director's tour just to get people in the same room, to try to get people mobilized and energized, and to try to unpack this drama, because it is a lot of the extent that the billionaire robber barons have gone to kill us and destroy so much beauty.
But they care about us.
So much.
But they care about us.
And that's what I keep telling people. It's like, people do feel it is so bleak and so hard, but there is this gorgeous awakening of this international eruption of consciousness and solidarity, with Palestine being like the cornerstone for that collective liberation, and understanding how all of these seemingly disparate issues connect, whether it's ICE brutality in the streets, whether it's Israeli occupation. I mean, we see the writing on the wall. We've been crying out from the rooftops for several years, but I feel like it's become so obvious and apparent watching.
Well, there's no hiding it anymore. I mean, just Palestine, for example, to start with, and now Venezuela. Yeah. It's like, you're not even going to lie. Like, you blew up a few fishermen on a boat, and you said that they were drug dealers, and you were trying to use this under the guise of like, see, we need to occupy because they're a threat. But then we realized that were just innocent fishermen, right? And that your lies were not, that you were feeding us were not sticking with the American people or convincing them. So you just went and did it. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm living in a bad 80s movie. I feel like the guys that are making these decisions watched way too many Arnold Schwarzenegger movies.
Pete Hegseth looks like a bad porn star from like the 80s too, so it's perfect. Yeah.
I mean, just in itself, just the way these cretins look, it's very disturbing, right? The way they present themselves to the world, they're not like me. They're not like my friends or my community or the people that I love and respect in this world. They're characters, of capitalism. These creepy, distorted, freaky, cartoonish villains. And it always troubles me to think like how the average American glorifies these folks, and how, we've got the Gulf of America and everybody's just like, okay, cool. And what is it now? What are they calling, the Office of War or whatever? Mm-hmm. There's just so much like toxic masculinity, right? And I think we know that where the root of that comes from, right, is a lot of insecurity. And like, I don't have time to die, and I don't want my daughter to die, and I don't want my family and this country to go in the toilet or the world to go in the toilet because of someone's small penis and or, insecurities with whatever unresolved trauma that they're not working through, right? And they're using us as like a coping mechanism in the world, right? I don't care how big your hands are. I really don't care about anything other than the damage that's being done to our world and to the people within it, and the everyday average person that just wants to see good in life. Most people don't want to see others harmed, and I think that's the biggest takeaway from one of the biggest takeaways of your film was seeing these boots on the ground small organizations. Let's say in Okinawa, for example, in the film, just those small, gentle, little old people, little old persons. I'm trying to say this in a PC way. Little elderly folk just doing their part and trying to stop, the destruction of that hillside and just walking back and forth. And it was such a Japanese way of protest, when I saw it. It was so zen, but just that slow walk, but it was making such an impact. Or them in the canoes and the things that you saw with them really trying to push forward with, protesting against the occupation of their land by the U.S. government. And you saw firsthand how they're handled. And, that's nixed pretty fast, right? They pick them up out of the water. I mean, I saw that one cop or military guy on the other side jump right onto that kayak and tackle a guy. I mean, it's pretty intense.
Yeah, which is rare in Japan because they don't really, there aren't many arrests, even during big mass arrests against Abe. There weren't many arrests. Mass protests against Abe, there weren't many arrests. And so it was a very dramatic moment to see that escalation. And like one of the people said in the film, they do this for the military. They do this for the U.S. military. Because Okinawa is essentially like a colonized arena and subjugated. The indigenous people there are subjugated by both Japan and the U.S. And there's this antiquated status of forces agreement that the U.S. has that essentially allows it to colonize Okinawa. And it drove me understanding the occupation of Okinawa and the perpetual abuses on the land and people actually drove my anti-imperialist understanding of the world. So to go back there 20 years later and put it as part of the film was really incredible. And we do it for them. We do it for those elderly folk who are doing that every day for 3 years. Like one of the guys, he's been doing it every day for 3 years because he knows that he has to. He has no other choice. And that's how I feel. We're Americans. The rest of the world is ready to go. They are waiting for us, and they're fearful of their future. And they only have so much capacity to change it with their governments. It is up to American citizens. We have to understand our responsibility.
You quoted Che Guevara last night on that concept of us being in the belly of the beast. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, he's, I'm going to butcher this beautiful quote that he said, but he basically just said he's so lucky of people who are in the imperial core. Because, man, can you imagine, being a revolutionary from outside and fighting the beast that is U.S. imperialism to be like, you're in the belly of it. You have the ability to actually change it.
You've already infiltrated it. So, we've got infiltrate, destroy, rebuild, right? And you're already in it. You've passed, we're in it.
We're in it.
Thank you for that clarification. But, you've already passed the hardest part, which is you're past the border. You're here. Mm-hmm. You can do some real damage, right? Like in a very positive way.
Yeah.
To really evil ways of thinking, right? And political ideals. So I really thought that was a really cool quote that you had used. And butchered or not, I get the general concept, and I'm not going to be able to quote anything right now other than myself. So you're in good company because I can't remember anything unless we're doing something like that. Exactly. I think it's a defense mechanism just to try to survive in this world, right? Like when I'm there, I'm there. And when I need to turn it off for a little while and I need to breathe, I do. But not everybody has that power, right? Would you say that's something that you have? How do you cope with all of this? Mm-hmm. How are you such a powerful voice for others? And how do you take care of yourself? Because I want others to know, if they are or want to do things like this, how do you take care of yourself?
Mm-hmm. I think that you need to, first and foremost, quite literally touch grass. And I'm not saying that as Like,
figure of speech. You mean it.
Literally mean go touch moss, go pull up enchanted moss in the Portland, Oregon, Pacific Northwest, and understand you are that, and that is you. That's my first suggestion, because I am such a product of the environment, and that is what drove my entire framework of the world, and my understanding of activism is just my worship of the earth and how that generates everything. Another thing is the unadulterated optimism through children, having 2 children, knowing the responsibility is beyond me. I've always felt the impossibility of this is something so beyond me and so beyond my life that I have it is literally the least I can do as a human being. I look at my colleagues, my brothers and sisters getting mowed down in Gaza for speaking the truth. How dare I not do everything with every fiber of my being to change this? And I have all the capacity. I have the privilege. I'm a white American. How dare I not? When my brothers and sisters are getting pulled out of their vehicles and thrown into unmarked cars, when my brothers and sisters are getting assassinated in the streets for not obeying quickly enough, this is not the society that I want to live in. I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight, and whatever that looks like, I know that you don't want this either. Whoever's listening, this is not the world that you want either. We're in or out. We don't have a choice anymore, and it's not scary. It's actually beautiful, because the truth is liberatory. The truth is empowering. Let it set you free. Let it give you the wings to fly, but also let the community give you the love and the friendship that you deserve, because that's what they want to strip down from us. That's what they want to rob our humanity and our love and our empathy, and we don't want to let that happen. And that just takes you getting out of your comfort zone and meeting the comrades and people in your community that love and care and respect. And I was just around 100 of these people last night, and it was beautiful. And I encourage all of you, be a part of it. Be a part of it.
That was going to be one of my questions. It's like, I think a lot of people feel like they're in a silo, and I think it's because the system has been implemented and sort of tweaked a bit, right? Since, let's say, the 80s and 90s, right? Like now with social media and social isolation, and I want to say post-pandemic, but like we still have like COVID-19, and there's an active virus in this world, and it's not over.
No.
It's just, we've just stopped talking about it.
Right.
But, all of these social isolation tactics that have occurred, have made it really hard for people to get up off the couch and not be afraid, and to go out and be seen and be social and be a part of things. And I know how important that is, right? And something that I preach to others every day. If you want to make a change, you have to get out there and you have to meet other people, other like-minded individuals, right? And organize. And, just like they did. And this is something you also touched on last night. We are going up against a system that is organized and has a lot of funding, but that funding comes from every single little person on this planet that is purchasing things and giving that money to the U.S. government, to capitalism, to billionaires. They didn't become billionaires because they're smart. They became billionaires because they're greedy, and they figured out a way to exploit it and to sell me something for $1.99 every day, right?
Yeah.
And I can get it within 24 hours. Right? So there's this instant gratification that I think people want, but that's not how change is going to occur.
Yeah.
So you would say to those out there right now that do want to make a change, but don't know what to do, you encourage them.
I encourage just every possible thing that you can do, because everything matters. They wouldn't be spending billions of dollars on propaganda and quote unquote correcting the record online and infiltrating every news system if that didn't matter. So everything you do to spread awareness online, if that's your only capacity, do that. If your only capacity is making these uncomfortable conversations happen in your workplace, library, books, are like, all of these things are profound and transformative. I would say more so than anything else, because they're peer-to-peer conversations that come from the heart. Showing solidarity for Palestinians, having people understand that you're one of them that they can come up and trust. And start a conversation with, wearing your keffiyeh, wearing watermelon pins, things like that. And also, of course, getting involved in an organization. Because we have to start militant strikes and union building and start understanding how we can collectively organize and actually shut down capital. Because, of course, I'm of the opinion we need to never let these people have a day of rest. I mean, these people who are administering genocide, subsidizing apartheid, I don't want them to walk around freely in the world and think that they can just be free people without understanding the impact of their actions. But that's not enough for them, because they can be siloed off. They can be surrounded by guards. They can live in underground bunkers like Mark Zuckerberg, the seed vault, and take over Hawaii. We need to step it up. But again, whatever your capacity and privilege is, whatever your comfort level is, but by God, do it. By God, do it, because they want you to feel rendered obsolete, meaningless, atomized. Don't let them win, and making you feel like nothing, making you feel invisible. That you have all the power. We have the collective power. We are the power. These people are nothing without us. And like you said, Elon Musk is the most disgusting parasite in the world. This man is the utmost example of just mediocrity, becoming rich off nothing. He's the most banal, basic dude who just sits on. Can you imagine being that rich and sitting online all day just posting neo-Nazi memes? I don't want to be a billionaire if this is what it does to you. What a sick, sad, pathetic individual. So money doesn't buy happiness. Community.
Clearly.
Community does. Community does. And so it really is all about getting out there and doing that, because that's love.
And I'm so thankful that you're a part of that community, because what you're doing right now is going city to city, screening this film, sharing all of the hard work that you've done, right? You and your husband have done, right? And your partner, and, like bringing people together, giving them a moment to come together, showing them it doesn't have to be one night. Mm-hmm. This is just an example of what we can do every night if we really want to. We can come together, but it takes a lot of navigation through the systems in place, like, quit your job, stop buying things online. I heard an individual last night, and it was quite powerful, but I'm going to touch on something because I like what you said in the response. There was a gentleman that actually said that they'd ended their business, and I commend them. But at the same time, how can we ever make any difference without having some sort of income to be able to fund, the campaigns, these anti-propagandist type of ideas and films and whatnot, if we don't have the funds to do it? And, like last night you touched on sort of, I have an iPhone. Mm-hmm. Because it's a necessity right now, right? It's part of what I need right now. It's a tool that I have to use, within this system. Can you touch on that a little bit for me?
Yeah, there's a lot of individual guilt, of course. And I think the problem with a lot of leftist circles is that circular firing squad where it's like, you're not a vegan, you're not this, how dare. It's so
militant.
It's a very militant, very kind of self-righteous attitude, and it's blaming the individual instead of them. Instead of the people who've done this to us and impose this will against our will. Like, none of us want to live this way. None of us want to have the mass exploitation of animals. Like, none of us want a society like this. I don't want to mine rare earth minerals from the Congo and have child labor to get an iPhone. Of course we don't want that, but we live in a society. We live under global capitalism. It sucks, dude. I hate having a brand that I have to compete with other brands and be like, I want to just do my thing, but the thing is, we have to survive, and we have to operate in the system to survive and make money. Venues cost money to rent. Theaters cost money to rent. We have to charge tickets. I wish everything could be free, and I wish this knowledge, because I know it has to be eventually, but I have to recoup the finances in order to give that gift.
And to continue on to do the work that you're doing, you have to travel. You have to go to these locations. You have to expose these things by having proof and evidence. And that means going there.
Yeah, it means long-form investigations, which is the antithesis of capitalism. You don't see documentaries made like this because they're not marketable and they're not profitable. And that's exactly why I need everyone's help really on board. It's such a grassroots effort. This knowledge is buried for a reason.
Definitely. And, I think we get just this little scratch at the surface on a lot of things that you actually go far more in depth in the film. I was not familiar of all of the infant deaths and whatnot in Camp Lejeune. I wasn't aware of sort of what happened there. The thing that I felt really compelling is knowing that we're going through that right now with the Fairchild Air Force Base, and now seeing the effects of it 50, 60, 70 years later. What are we going to see 50, 60, 70 years later? And are we going to have our own baby heaven right down the street?
Yeah, and you just saw RFK. I mean, the Make America Healthy Again. It's been such a scam. You just saw them actually reinstate PFAS for vegetables. And I remember someone actually was telling me about the Fairchild Air Force Base. A government official here just said, still eat your vegetables, kids. If I were to choose between not eating them because PFAS were sprayed on them or eating them, you should still eat your vegetables. It's like, this person should be fired.
Yeah.
Like, why? Like, this is a sitting official?
Eat the poison.
I mean, this is Spokane, everyone. This is your government. They are lying to you. You are being poisoned. PFAS contamination is happening in your backyard. We need to stop it because the military is the largest perpetrator of this, and they don't need to be using it. They can have safe alternatives, and they could have gotten off of it years ago.
I mean, there were so many parts and times within the film that I was getting pretty emotional, right? It was either anger or just a really deep sadness, especially when you were watching those like sort of war games that were being participated and watching that amazing, sustainable community within Oahu. Was it? I think it was Oahu, right?
Yeah.
And how they had this infrastructure to be able to live sustainably forever, off of the sea life and the vegetation and just their way of treating the land, and how capitalism just came in and barreled through, right, with imperialism and destroyed that land, destroyed that way of life. And this is just one example. And then is destroying, and not only destroying, but has the consent from whoever gives the consent to like kill marine life and marine animals. I mean, just watching those whales with that sonar, like technology being used on them, it's just torture, and it was really hard to watch because you don't see that. Like, I'm on land,
Why did I know about the Cove when I was 13? Why was I writing letters to the Japanese government telling them to stop whaling? And when I didn't know what my government was perpetrating, a literal holocaust of marine creatures.
What were they calling it with the ones that they're allowed to kill? Takes. And they get a large, like insanely amount of grace with these takes.
Yeah, so NOAA, which is the actual oceanic administration force of the government that enlists these mammals as endangered. So it's the same government body that actually lists the animals and talks about how we need to protect them, actually grants the military an authorized amount of takes every year. No one writes about this. There's been like one article, Dar Jamil, the journalist in the film, wrote about it. It's just so fascinating because we're so anthropogenic that we don't even consider the impact on not only marine mammals, but what about everything else in the ocean that's impeded by these high decibel assaults? So I was just so disgusted and horrified to learn that we're talking about millions of takes. And it's not just direct killing, it's the impediment of nursing, navigation, because all these animals live on sound. That's what the ocean is. It's a realm of sound. And so when you're using growlers, which is the loudest plane in the world, constantly on these massive aircraft carriers, constantly assaulting the oceans, going to war with them, these animals are just assaulted on a daily basis. And it's not just that, it's the sonar, which travels 300 miles. And so we're talking about millions and millions of takes. I remember learning about the dolphins, 22 million dolphins. And I thought, wow, that's more dolphins than there are even on the planet. How is that possible? Because they're assaulting multiple pods. They are literally accounting for every single dolphin on the planet. Multiple times.
One of the most intelligent creatures like in the world.
Yeah. Again, the short-sighted insanity. Do they not want whales to exist? It's like, what? Like,
well, you touch on that dystopian thought and that dystopian like sort of society that's just waiting to happen, and that's why I think we're at such a critical breaking point right now of either you're either with us or against us type of situation, right? You have to choose. There is no middle of the road. There's nothing more annoying than that person who's sort of the disruptor. I think I respect my enemy more for at least telling me the truth to my face on what you believe, right? Be a racist, be a fascist. You're right. Yeah. You tell me what you're telling me. You're out. But when you're this middle of the road, wishy-washy kind of person, that's kind of like, well, I don't,
it's complicated.
I kind of see things from like them, and and they never make a decision, and they're always on the fence. And I feel like that's how we lose elections. That's how third parties don't get elected. We get these people, right? Either they're so polarized, right? And I hate to talk about that, but you're either on one side or the other. And you talk about that two-party system, right? And how and I talk about it all the time. It's rigged. Like anytime anyone has any sort of form of any kind of ideals outside of those two parties, they're shut down. And then they're sort of demonized for taking away the popular vote, right? From whichever person was going to potentially win. But then we see that it's also the system is rigged through the Electoral College. And so it doesn't matter, right? Like in some ways what the people want, because the people didn't want Donald Trump the first time. Yep. And we were forced to have him as our president the first time, right?
Yep.
So, I just think there's just so many layers, so many things, so many of the disruptions, but like, I think, there's a lot of people that are unable to make decisions. And I think being able to be given this educational moment through your film, I think it's going to help people like decide, You shared a personal account last night of your cousin supporting you, who's like a military guy, you know, military family, coming to see your film, brought their daughter. And I thought this was such a touching, like, awesome story that you shared last night. And that's why I'm touching on it. I hope you don't mind.
That's perfect.
But your niece was wanting to join the military, and after watching your film, she changed her mind.
Yeah. And this is why the film is so powerful, because it is one of those things where you can read as many books as you want. It's hard to read. No one has time. This is a one-stop shop where it's a truth injection. You're taking the red pill, baby. Take the journey with us. Eyes wide open. I'm sick of being gaslit and lied to about genocide, about war, about empire, about capitalism, about why gas is costly, about my trans and immigrant neighbors and brothers and sisters. I'm sick of it. And if you are too, join us. It's not about partisanship. It's about truth. And the truth is liberatory. I'll say it, and I'll say it again, is that it's not something to be scared of. It's something to embrace with a heart wide open and soul that's raw. Because we all know this to be true. I think a lot of us who have been watching this horrific genocide, no one who's listening to this wants children to starve. Do you? I don't believe you do.
And if you do, you're a horrible, terrible human being that should not be here.
Capitalism has beaten you down so much that you've degraded the sanctity of life, and I feel so bad for you. But for the majority of listeners, I know that you don't want this. You don't want your tax dollars doing this. You don't want your retirement funding ICE detention centers. None of us want this. We have to come together and really think outside the box. But yes, my cousin, I've had so many active duty soldiers and veterans come and see this movie, and they are changed for life. There's no way you can walk away from learning this information and being proud of having a military empire. It's not about not having a military. It's about scaling down a military empire and forcing the rest of the world to succumb to it at the barrel of a nuclear armed gun.
And the basis of all of this is fear.
Yes.
Fear of my neighbor, fear of Russia, fear of China, you know, all of the fear mongering, especially specifically China as of the late. You touch on that in the film, right? We seem to always use them as sort of the scapegoat for, like, this is why we're doing what we're doing. They're a threat. And it's just really like this race. It's always been the same race for power and to be the superpower in the world. And for what?
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen what it's done.
Yeah.
We're the number one superpower in the world, and look what we've done.
Yeah.
Right?
And I have people all the time being like, well, if we weren't on top, Russia would be, and then it would be so much worse. I'm like, what would be worse? What could anyone do that's worse than what the U.S. has done? Tens of millions of bodies, dozens of coups, destabilizing regions of the world, pillaging every last drop. What could be worse? The torture, the gulags, Saudi Arabia, Israel. What could be worse than this? It's the most bizarre chauvinist mindset where it's like, well, good thing it's us. It's like, why? Good thing for who? You? You think that's going to trickle down to you? 1.5 trillion to the Pentagon? You're going to see a penny? No. It's actually going to rob you blind.
Well, they're going to continue to rob you. In the film, you show like their like disbursement of just ammunition, right?
Oh my God.
And how they go out and they play and they shoot, and then anything that they don't use, they set an explosive to and detonate it and destroy it so that they can get the same amount for their contracts the following year. And they have to show that they're using what they're being paid for, right? And so for all of you listening, they have these huge ammo dumps that they're digging out, and they're, you know, like setting with explosives, right? Which is almost like this, like really like ridiculous, like duality in itself. Like we're blowing things up to blow things up that blow people up for money. And it just doesn't make any sense. It's so insane. I mean, it's like a Looney Tune cartoon,
it is.
You know, like I don't know. It's just so insane. And so, like, I was really taken back by the film. I really loved everything about it.
Thank you so much. And let me just interject really quickly that Spokane, Fairchild is the
Fairchild Air Force Base.
Air Force Base. I heard last night, also to those who are listening, that speaking of ammunition dumps, there's oil dumps, fuel dumps of all the planes. That is, several whistleblowers have come out from Fairchild saying that they dump all of the fuel into the river because it's lighter to land and easier, and it makes them more agile. So that's a standard practice for all the pilots.
The hardest part for me is, like, as a little boy, I grew up in Southeast Texas, right on the border, like, of the Gulf of Mexico, mind you, right? I am part Mexican, and so it will always be the Gulf of Mexico because actually, you know, my indigenous peoples who are on this continent first, who were not pillagers, actually It's weird. I have this duality. You know, I'm part occupation, like the person who occupied this land. My mother, you know, is of, you know, Swedish and French descent. And then I'm also part of the indigenous peoples. So there's this like extremity of this, like this fight within myself. I've never ever sided with the occupiers, right? But, you know, it's just, it's laughable to hear people like, you know, say, leave our country. And, you know, this whole ICE situation, you know, it's just the privatization of an army for one dictator. It has nothing to do with immigration. It has everything to do with terrorizing the American people. That's it. You know, rule with an iron fist, right? And unfortunately,
Obey
the ones obey or die. And unfortunately, the scapegoat and
that's hostage.
the martyrs
hostage.
at this moment are immigrants, right? Yes. But once all the immigrants are gone, well, then who will they use that privatized military against, right? You. So, you're not safe. And it's always said, what are you going to do when the knock's at your door, right? And will you care then? But it'll be too late. And so, you know, I definitely try to, like, you know, I definitely encourage those out there, right, to seek truth, to speak out about the truth. Watch this film. Know that you're not alone. There is community. There is a format. There is a platform for you to be able to do these things. And we don't have much time left because I know we only had an hour, and this has been an incredible experience. And thank you so much for being here. Like, I feel like we could talk for a lot longer.
We could talk forever. You're great. You're fabulous. I love it. I would be an avid listener to this program if I lived in Spokane.
Well, I really appreciate that, you know, and I just appreciate the opportunity to meet you, you know. I went in blind and I didn't do a lot of research on you. I didn't know much about you, you know, and when I saw the film, I watched some of your documentaries and stuff, and I'd seen them growing up. You're not much older than I am. I was almost drafted into the occupation of Iraq, right? And I refused, and I did not have to go. I don't believe, right, in occupying other people's lands, you know, and telling them what to do, or trying to pervert a culture to be more like us, Americanize the world. You know, everything has beauty, you know, and just because some people don't see it at the top doesn't mean that it doesn't deserve to exist. And I think that's where we can just finish up and do a little bit of talking about Palestine. I know that that is a very hot button like topic right now, you know, and I know that it wants to be talked about. So I want to hear sort of like your final thoughts, because it is the final location in the film. And you saw a lot of the destruction firsthand, you know, and I just want to hear a little bit more about that.
I mean, as bad as I thought Palestine was, this is kind of one of the things that, like, as much as you read about it or document it from a distance, nothing can compare you to the knowledge of being there on the ground and seeing the devastation wrought firsthand by meeting the victims. I mean, I was there first in 2016, and again, just seeing the writing on the wall. It was a period of relative calm. It's never a period of relative calm for Palestinians, but I mean, Israelis were certainly not experiencing anything. And the casual genocidal mania that had overtaken Israeli society was flabbergasting. And I'm not talking about the wanton war crimes and daily humiliation and all the horrific things I documented in the West Bank. I'm just talking about the Israelis. And I thought, oh my God, this is totally sanitized from the West. No one hears from Israelis. No one hears what they really think and feel. Everyone wants to paint Netanyahu as this insane person, just like they do Trump. When really Trump does exemplify a lot of the worst traits of American society, Netanyahu really does exemplify the worst, not just the worst, Israeli society. And so when I made Gaza Fights for Freedom, which people can watch online, about the Great March of Return in 2019, it was the first time where there was no plausible deniability about Hamas or anything like that. It was just a mass protest, totally peacefully, and people were just mowed down by cowardly snipers perched behind sand dunes methodically over and over again over the course of 6 months. And one day they killed 62 people alone, including children, disabled people, and medics. And I was so horrified by the lack of accurate coverage by the media, I decided to do it justice, work with Palestinian videographers, do this movie to prove the war crimes. And I just thought if people just knew, then they would understand this issue. And then here we come, the genocide. It's worse than we could ever imagine. 3 years on to witness the most horrific live-streamed Holocaust, the complete destruction of this densely populated area, the carpet bombing, the starvation, the worst war crimes, the worst humanity could ever be capable of. I'm still floored. It still shocks me to my core, day in and day out, that this is what humanity has allowed in this so-called rules-based order, these liberal politicians that allow empire to run roughshod, that allow Israel to run rampant. And the thing is, like Gustavo Petro, the president of Colombia, said, Gaza is a testing ground for us all. This is what the billionaire parasites will do to an uprising of humanity. They want to do this to the global south. They've done it before. They'll do it again, and they're testing their limits. So if we don't stop that, it's not going to stop with Palestine. None of this is.
It's
This
never
is
enough.
all of us. It's never going to be enough.
It's never enough because the people that are doing it are sick.
They're sick.
And when you're sick, you don't know when to stop.
You don't know when to stop. And when no one stops you, you keep going. And that's why we see Iran and Venezuela and Syria and everywhere. And it's not going to stop. And it's not going to stop there. And for people who are upset about immigration or the refugee crisis, what do you think causes these things? I mean, it is just, it's so connected.
Who do you think sends immigrants to this country?
Yeah.
War zones.
Yeah.
You know, right? Totalitarian regimes, destruction. These people feel unsafe. And they look at the American dream because it was a country founded on immigrants. And I think people, right? At the destruction of indigenous people. But for a country to have been founded by immigrants, and for those immigrants to tell other immigrants that you're not allowed to be here, it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever, most ridiculous concept I've ever tried to wrap my mind around. They are coming here because they don't feel safe in the parts of the world that we've made unsafe. How are they a bad person? How are they an enemy of our country?
Racism.
It really is.
It really
It's unfiltered.
It is.
You know, but I digress. I wanted to tell you and share one thing with you that really, was very, really got to me when I was watching all the military, infrastructure and vehicles and stuff being, transported on the trains. Mm-hmm. When I was a little boy,
yeah.
Growing up in the Deep South, right, not only did I have to deal with segregation and lots of racism, right, especially being a mixed race child, right, but I would see those trains. Me and my friends would have, we would go to the train tracks and we would, crush, quarters and pennies and stuff on the rail tracks with the trains. But all too many times when I was growing up, did I see all of this military equipment. I'm in the middle of the woods. I'm next to a train track, but I have this insane image of these giant war machines going by as a little boy. And I don't understand what they are or why they're there. Or sitting there next to the water of the Gulf of Mexico, right? Of Mexico. And watching these tankers come in with oil from Iraq and all of the other Middle Eastern countries that it was robbed from, right? Through war. And this was the Gulf War at the time. And watching these black helicopters on the ship and stuff come in. I've seen it personally as a child. I didn't understand it. But it's so much more visceral to know that I was in it. Yeah. And I was seeing it happen as a child. Right. And that's why I care, right? Because I grew up in a cancer knoll, right? That's where the oil was refined from war parties who come back from pillaging, right? To sell it to the American people and choke on it. And, luckily I left there because I'd probably be dead right now already of cancer. But
and that's what people need to understand. Just the maintenance of the arsenal alone
is insane.
Beyond the application of the weaponry, beyond the production of the weaponry, just to maintain the tanks and the B-52 bombers and the Boeing Pegasuses and all these things to lubricate the engines and to keep the mission ready is going to destroy the planet. Just that. Yeah. Just that. The dumping of the chemicals, the Air Force hangars, all of this alone. People need to understand this is how destructive just that is.
Well, just to think as a kid seeing that stuff come back home, though, and in retrospect, looking at what's happening in Palestine and thinking that all of that blood shed, it was just coming right back in my backyard as a little kid, while I wanted to play, and just that ickiness that it gives me, that feeling, that gross feeling that I get now, knowing that things that are happening in the world today, right now in Palestine, were happening back then in Iraq and Afghanistan and always have been. But it just, I don't know, I feel like I have so much more of a personal connection to it. Just seeing it all the time. It wasn't just every once in a while. It's every day.
No, and you have a child, and that's the thing. It's once Palestinians were able to reclaim their stories and tell us what they're going through, the horrors were so visceral. It's Iraqis didn't have that.
And I like that your film fights back against the dehumanization of children, right? Of cultures, right? But specifically children. You show a lot of children in the film, especially the ones with the after effects in Iraq. Mm-hmm. With all of the different types of metals and the poisoning that's been done since all of the occupations that have gone down in just that country alone. and all of the effects, not only the effects that it had on the Iraqi people, but also the Americans that were there who were also shooting those bullets and also getting equally as contaminated at the same time. I think it's just really wonderful because you show multiple perspectives and you show that the damage is not just on one side.
Right.
You know, and I know that we're out of time, and I've just had so much fun with you.
So
I really enjoyed talking with you, and like I said, I'm a talker. That's why we have this show.
I want you to be my therapist, man. I'll keep paying you to do therapy with me. But you guys check out for real life, earthsgreatestenemy.com. Try to catch me on the director's tour, you guys. I'm going all over the world.
You've got sold out shows in like every major city in the U.S.
People are thirsty for the information. They're starving for it. They're so sick of being lied to.
We're tired of being abused.
Yeah.
It's, you know,